All right, Dad, try this again. Take 8. It's tough. Happy Father's Day, by the way. All right. Fuck. All right. Dad, top 15. I want to take an opportunity to tell you how much you've meant to me in my life. Times have changed, as they always do. And that day when I should have, could have, or would have said or done something is approaching. If you would have asked anyone when I was a teenager what the odds were of you living to 75 and me to 55, there would have been few who would have put it past 50-50. And here we both are. You've been the largest influence in my entire life. You're the most honest and selfless person I've ever known. Your optimism and positive mental attitude are innate and not just a gimmick a salesman uses to make friends in short order. You are genuinely that way and have been my entire life. I've shared many things with you that I know as a fact have not been repeated to anyone. There are several people who have the same story with you. Telling you something is like throwing a rock in the sea. It's a tremendous virtue in short supply these days. If someone would have asked me in the 1980s, if we would have ended up like we are now, would we have considered that a success? Of course. These subsequent years have been a huge leap for us all. You built a career, you joined Mary's family. Bill and I began our lives as young adults and started our own family. After many ups and downs and various people coming in and out of the picture over many decades, I still always have a genuine respect for your opinions on most subjects. What is your opinion on much of anything? I think that answer would be, it depends on who's asking. You've always defaulted to non-confrontational when it pertained to me. In a world where everyone has their 2 cents to add to any subject and are offended by anything that's not their preferred flavor, there's you. You can make friends with a fire hydrant, Dad. No matter where we were, you're almost always the most level-headed guy in the room. Great situational awareness. I never saw you sing in a church or make a public speech, though. That would have been comedy. Up there with the cowboy boots. Line dancing days. But I do think it's only fair that I do record our top 15 moments. Share it with the world. Number 1, stepping up in the first place. From where? There are no baby, elementary, junior high, or high school pictures of you. As if they did not exist at all. In fact, there's no one I'm aware of who's still alive that knows you even existed prior to high school. Maybe Mary. Birth certificate says your father was a deadbeat sailor. Imagine that. Never met him, your mom, or anyone related to you. I do remember a Thanksgiving, though. It was way back in the day with your University of Iowa physiology professor, Uncle Charles Immig. One weekend we were with you as kids. For a guy with such little pedigree, provenance, or personal history, I find it stunning you're in the entire history of my life. Adopting 2 kids from a troubled marriage was a huge commitment. Then to have the relationship with my mom fall apart only a couple years later, leaving you on the hook for child support until I left for the Navy. A lot of those checks went to stuff like tennis lessons, baseball, basketball, football programs, when you were not there. But you were there playing sports with Bill and I as kids, all the way up until we got too big. Then we crushed you. But it starts with making that commitment in the first place. Coming to West Des Moines, number 2. My first memory actually is with you. We're in Davenport in a trailer park and we had a beach ball. Someone kicked it down a big hill behind the trailer and I remember you running down the hill to get the ball. I also remember being in a field with Bill, putting the chain back on his bike and running his finger through the sprocket and it was bleeding. That same place, Bill and I got busted for throwing tomatoes at a wall in an empty apartment next to the one we lived in. I believe this was Newton. The next memory was Country Kitchen on 8th Street in West Des Moines. We were driving around in a Chevy Suburban delivery vehicle for Country Kitchen. We got stuck in a flood in Valley Junction. We were delivering food in styrofoam containers to the workers at Penn-Dixie. And we couldn't make it, so we ate their food. Bill also cut his leg open on the broken ketchup bottle in the trash bag. There was Guppy, tuna, and the goofy guy washing dishes. There was the old jukebox in the back that controlled the small table side jukeboxes that were in the booth. Junk song, and we just kicked it and it skipped. No country geeks. It was Elvis, and they got a refund. Drinking chocolate milk, eating berries out of the cooler. This was huge. I do also remember Bill telling me outside behind the garages at Colonial Village Apartments that you and Mom were getting a divorce and it would be over. My next memories form around those times when you lived in Ashworth Estates Apartments after the divorce. In 1976, we went and saw the movie Rocky at Merle Hay Mall in Sweet Pea, the shitty green Ford Vega. I learned to play chess. We would shoot BB guns at the old liquor bottles. I remember that odd-shaped bottle of Italian Galliano we used as a target. We were also in the Cub Scouts in the wooden car derby. I had the crappiest gold-painted car and the wheel fell off. They gave me a prize anyways. We were always watching NFL games in Muhammad Ali box. It was fun. I remember watching the British sitcom The Goodies on late-night TV. And us going bowling at Val Lane's, watching Jim Zabel broadcast Let's Go Bowling live early on weekend mornings. These are the best of times. Number 3, not showing up on 19th Street one weekend. That lasted for a few years. I do remember calling and asking Bill and Mom what was going on and where were you. I was told he's done, to forget about it, move on, rip my heart out. I refused to subscribe. I knew there was something I was not being told, but just too young. Life went downhill fast for both Bill and I shortly thereafter. Mom's inability to manage her own life was only complicated by the needs of Bill and I. We were growing up rapidly and beginning to question the source of many of the problems. Things went from bad to worse. The apartment life, issues at school, on food stamps, verbal, physical, sexual abuse, all happened during these years you were gone. None of which you were informed of until many years later. Both of us ran away from home multiple times and were on a downward spiraling trajectory as delinquents. When the cops got involved, I was sent to live with Mark, my biological father, a very small Iowa town surrounded by farms and fields. It did not go well. It was a square peg in a round hole. Mark, like you, was also never given the full story by my mom. Although I was off the street, I was a fish out of the water in a small town Iowa culture. Number 4, Bill's Wah Beat call. My heart soared. When Bill said he had seen you and wanted me to see me too, it was amazing. I'd have to find a way to make it work with Mom. I remember the exact night you came back with Bill in the dark blue sedan DeVille Cadillac. It was in front of the apartments back at Colonial Village in West Des Moines. There was a heavy mist in the air and it was dark. Bill popped out of the passenger side smoking a cig. You were back. You lived in Ankeny, a little apartment with a grassy lot we played catch in. Same grassy lot I slashed open the leg with a huge gash from that diving football catch. These were the video game days too. If we were not at Dark Star Arcade in Ames, we were across the street at the convenience store playing video games and smoking cigs. It was cool he let Bill and I smoke. I was 14. It was a different time for sure, but like you said, in those days, smoking cigs was the least of your concerns with those two. These are also the Bob Glass days. Doing the family counseling to get Bill out of the YMCA boys' home, off of Title 19, and living with you in Webster City. Those counseling sessions with the two-way mirror in that little office in that strip mall off Douglas Avenue in Des Moines. Bob basically concluded Mom's bullshit snowballed into our lives. The inability to deal with it had repercussions. This was no fault of yours. Mom and I were destined to have it out, and we did, many times. There are a multitude of variables at play, as you're aware. It's too much. I dropped out of school and was back in the streets in a couple of years. I did have your phone number and did remain in touch. Kept me alive deep down. I knew I was loved, after all. Number 5. It was also during those years the good times were back. Bill, you and I were back together in Webster City. I got my first guitar, my first plane ride to go see the Vikings in Minneapolis, And you taught us how to drive. You also taught me how to play golf and poker. There was the wrestling matches that were fantastic. There was the gambling for cigarettes at the same time. The time I drank too much and puked all over the bathroom and had no idea that I did. You never told Mom but made me clean it up. I was so embarrassed. But you never threw me under the bus. There was also the teenage lifetime poker ledger that you always paid. On the weekends, I would call you with all the NFL games on Sunday when we'd alternate picking the winning teams for $1 each. You're always a Bears fan, and I've always been a Vikings fan. One Super Bowl victory between two teams in 60 years of football. Terrible. But we saw him play a few times over the years in Chicago and Minneapolis. He also taught us how to drive. Can never be forgotten. Seeing you in the passenger seat with us driving, this is the most hilarious character defect I've ever seen in a grown man. You freak out like an animal at a zoo fire when you're not in control. Teaching Bill and I how to drive in the old Escort in Ankeny. We literally had to stop the car so you could get out, and you were the one giving the lessons. Just priceless memories. It would make you so angry, and everyone else was just laughing hysterically as I am now writing this. Absolutely no roller coasters, no Ferris wheels, no motorcycle rides or merry-go-rounds either. Just comedy. However, playing the role of stepfather is not easy, but you seemed perfectly chosen for this role. Number 6, the tough years. There were some lessons Bill and I had to learn on our own. We both dropped out, bad attitudes, drugs, crime, wrong crowd, cops. Mom insisting I go to rehab to return home was important. I was going nowhere fast on the streets. I did get to see where the life of drunks and drug freaks ended up, though. I wasn't subscribing to the jail and death were my only future if I continued to drink and use drugs, though, as per my counselor, John. So I was then sent to Omaha for a halfway house for troubled teens run by Catholic charities that you couldn't have coordinated. I was 16. You drove Mom every other weekend from Des Moines to Omaha to visit me and speak with the nun counselor, Eileen. It took a lot of courage. The halfway house did not work out too well either. It was the right idea, but kind of bullshit too. I had to tell you and Mom I was being kicked out because I pissed on a kid's clothes and threw them out the window into the snow below. Mom was livid. You laughed. Well, Mom was trying to get certified as her own drug counselor. You never really thought I was an alcoholic or a drug addict. That was important. I returned home for a few months. There was just no way I was living with Mom. She said it was her way or the highway, and I gladly opted for the highway. Bill joined the Army. I got an apartment with a buddy, a job delivering pizzas, and realized I was going nowhere fast. I was a dropout. I kept in touch with you this entire time. You even came over to the apartment on Forest Avenue in Des Moines by Drake University once. You were also there playing poker with Alec, Matt, and myself the entire night long on 4th Street in West Des Moines. Until the next morning when it was time to get on the plane for California, join the Navy. Number 7. When I joined the Navy, 17, they were the last place that would take me. You knew this was a great opportunity for me. You were right. The countless times of standing on the end of a pier somewhere around the planet, calling collect on a payphone, talking with you. The Navy was a pretty lonely place at times. Your calls kept my spirits up. Even in the most difficult times, I needed these words of encouragement. You believed in me while I was going through training. You were also there when Maria the Swede came to see me in America while I was on leave that Christmas in 1990. It was also the first time I met Mary and her family. Shortly thereafter, we were headed to war in Persian Gulf. Number 8. Mary and the family were big for you. Something you always wanted. You did a great job. John, Jen, and Gwen all benefited from your addition to their family. Mary had a huge Catholic family from the old neighborhood in Cedar Rapids, too. You made the house a home with Mary and the kids. There were the holidays, the food, the camping, the old friends and extended family members, the old haunted house parties on Halloween, and the Easter egg hunts with the grandkids at the old place. 215th Street Northwest. Many of the names and faces have come and gone over the years now. We're still here. This is important to all of us, as you're a predictable force of stability in almost all the situations. Number 9, money and business. When I lived in Sweden and had the bicycle parts business, that was my first foray into business. You co-signed a loan of $10,000 for me. You were my sole point of contact for all the parts that were sent to your house. I remember that huge box of parts I took on the plane with me back to Stockholm as part of my luggage. Most all of it got past Swedish customs with the fake receipts. It reminded me of your shoebox of fake receipts for your taxes. I always liked how you thought about money. It's important to you that you always invested in our future. You helped finance my first electric guitar. I was 14 years old. I've played guitars for 40 years now, Dad. You offered to pay for half of Bill and I's first cars. You accomplished this for about $200. You paid child support on both of us the entire time of our youth as well. Your boss, Darwin, told me years later when I worked with you that he sometimes loaned you a few bucks in the early years when you had Bill and I for the weekend. You were always generous, but deep down you always liked to stick it to the man. You were correct. Life seems to be about relationships and a purpose in life. I still talk to my friends in Sweden 30 years later. I still ride a nice bike. And then the loan got paid off. I made about $3,000 on that 10. Number 10, college and combined insurance. You made sure Bill and his education and mine were taken care of. Intelligence comes in a variety of shapes and sizes and skill sets. Combined insurance is more of a hustle on guaranteed issue life insurance than any real estate planning. I remember the first meeting in Chicago with you and the one guy that looked at you and then me and said, "That's not your kid." That was great. But you're correct in that most of those folks we sold insurance to would have pissed the money away on something else anyways. Most new agents lasted about a month. I made it a few months. You made it a 30-plus year career. You hustled every trailer park, apartment complex, hog farm, and low-rent neighborhood in the state to make things happen. I learned a lot from those early and subsequent days in the insurance and financial business. It just wasn't meant for me. But the colleges indeed not only allowed me into many conversations, dates, interviews, and jobs, gave me the feeling of accomplishment and a broader understanding of how the world works. I did a lot of writing and creative stuff in college. I do a lot of creative stuff and still write today. Some people, not a lot of the money has ever been made by me writing stories, but it's the thought that counts. Lauren and Trey are also now in college, and I'm fortunate enough to participate in helping them out. It's important, gives me the feeling you must have had, knowing you paid the freight. It's quite a bit more expensive now, but like you said, you remember gasoline at 3 cents a gallon one time way back in the day. That's way back there. All right, number 11, all the grandkids. They learned you were a loving, goofy guy their whole life. There are many photos and memories of you at every step in their lives as well. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, etc. How many meals, gifts, drinks, and rounds of golf have you actually paid for? Almost all of them, to be honest. How many camping trips did we go on across eastern Iowa? It was always about family and friends. Even as some of the family and friends fought with each other over a variety of different disagreements, very few of them were with you. It's quite the virtue to genuinely be amicable. There are also quite a few Jaces now around Cedar Rapids, and all of them are tied directly to you. I learned a lot about the history of the city I was born in while I lived there. My kids, too, were born there. It served its purpose. I moved back to the old neighborhood in West Des Moines. You and Mary came to see the new house and got lost. I had to come get you guys, but it's the thought that counts. It was important to you to see how things ended up. The kids will move on after school, I suspect, but it was all started in Cedar Rapids by a guy who had no children of his own. You. Dyersville. The tough days indeed as an adult. 2014. in general was a low point. I was down on my mortgage, behind. The bank wouldn't refinance the house. Lost my driver's license from a drunk driving charge. Had our mandatory court dates in a county with no way of getting there during the day. It was you and Mom driving from Des Moines to take me. I'm grateful for this. Those jokers tried to hose me. You were not judgmental and were in my corner. This incident surely is not how I planned my future on college graduation day. You were there in the good times and you were there in the not so good times. You were also correct in that it didn't amount to much in the end. The hammer came in and beat him up in Discovery, and it all fell apart. That's great. He even came down to Iowa City to take me out to lunch and out for my birthday that year. It was cool. 13. The Catholic Church. Hard to mention you without mentioning your belief in the Catholic Church. You've been a devout Catholic your entire life. I never thought much of it, but I did look into it. I remember St. Teresa's in Des Moines, the Catholic Church in Webster City, St. Mary's in Iowa City, St. Pat's in Cedar Rapids. All these combined are nowhere as cool as the Vatican. I've been there 3 times. I went to Mass there too. I'll go again, I'm sure. Personally, after my own research, I think it's all a bunch of bullshit. The pedophile should have been clue number 1, Dad. Hey, in the end, if you're correct, and it is heaven and angels, well, I feel my sins might draw a little extra scrutiny, but I'm going to use you as a reference. Keep that in mind, Dad. Thanks in advance. Number 14, physical fitness. I remember playing catch with the football, basketball, tennis, racquetball, and golf with you. It was this interest and introduction to sports that got me going. I remember you there at football games in high school. I remember you were happy I made it as a Navy diver. I remember you watching me play in basketball tournaments as an adult. I remember there with my knee surgeries from basketball. Then there was the fact that you were overweight your entire life. We looked nothing alike. Bill and I towered over you and eventually crushed you in all the sports. But it was not until my mid-40s that I could ever beat you in golf. But we got a good deal on the free veterans golf gig. It was great to give you a benefit back. But most importantly was your own success in losing the weight, Dad. That was so big. It was so important. It took you 60 to 70 years to accomplish this. It was a lifetime goal and you did it. This was so impressive. I'm proud of you for doing it. The 2-minute warning. Well, here we are at the end of the game, Dad. You've been diagnosed with some dementia. I have cancer. I'm not real sure how this is going to end. I just want to take the time to tell you how important you've been in my life on Father's Day. It's taken days to write this. I have cried many, many times, knowing there will be a change between myself and the person who has loved me the most in my life. I have learned so much from you. I'm slow, not stupid. I just wanted everyone to know the depth of your character, because I just don't make a lot of guys like you anymore, Dad. God love you. Happy Father's Day.